A freezing 8-year-old street kid pushes past armed guards to return a billionaire's lost wallet. The ruthless crime boss expects to find his cash missing. Instead, he pulls out a crumpled, water-stained photograph hidden inside the billfold, and the blood instantly drains from his face. The biting December wind, sweeping off Massachusetts Bay, was merciless, cutting through the narrow cobblestone alleys of Boston's North End like shards of broken glass. For 8-year-old Toby, the cold was a physical weight pressing down on his frail shoulders. He huddled deeper into the alcove of a boarded-up bakery on Salem Street, wrapping his thin, oversized denim jacket tighter around his torso. His sneakers taped together at the soles offered no protection against the sleet pooling on the pavement. To the rest of the city, Toby was invisible, just another tragic statistic swallowed by the foster system's cracks after his mother Clara passed away in a crowded municipal shelter 3 months ago. But Toby possessed a survival instinct that bordered on the supernatural. He knew how to stay quiet. He knew how to watch. Tonight, his dark, observant eyes were fixed on the back entrance of Il Cigno, an exclusive invitation-only social club that served as the nerve center for the Moretti crime syndicate. Inside that club sat Vincent Moretti. At 38, Vincent was a phantom in the Boston underworld, a man whose legitimate business empire, Moretti Logistics, moved billions of dollars in global freight, while his shadow empire controlled the eastern seaboard's illegal ports. Vincent was impeccably tailored, ruthlessly efficient, and famously devoid of a pulse when it came to his enemies. 10 years ago, the streets said he had a heart. 10 years ago, he was engaged to a civilian, a brilliant, fiery nursing student named Clara Hayes. But after a rival faction, the Irish-led Callahan Syndicate, firebombed her sedan on Interstate 93. The Vincent that remained was nothing more than a hollowed-out executioner. The heavy steel door of Il Cigno suddenly groaned open, spilling warm yellow light onto the freezing alley. Toby shrank back into the shadows. 3 massive men in dark wool overcoats stepped out, first their eyes, scanning the rooftops and fire escapes. Then came Vincent. He wore a charcoal Tom Ford suit under an unbuttoned cashmere topcoat, looking less like a street thug and more like a Wall Street titan. His jaw was clenched, his slate-gray eyes reflecting the harsh glow of the street lamp. "Carmine, get the car," Vincent ordered, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that commanded absolute obedience. Callahan's people are getting bold. The sit-down was a waste of breath. Bringing the Maybach around now, Boss Carmine, his silver-haired underboss, replied into an earpiece. Before the black luxury sedan could even turn the corner, the deafening roar of a modified engine shattered the quiet of the night. An unmarked grey SUV tore down the alley, killing its headlights. Pop, 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 pop. The staccato crack of suppressed automatic gunfire echoed off the brick walls. Toby covered his ears, pressing his face into the freezing dirt. "Gun down!" Carmine roared. Vincent's bodyguards reacted with military precision, drawing their weapons and returning fire, shattering the SUV's rear windows. Vincent lunged behind a row of steel dumpsters, his hand instinctively reaching into his breast pocket for his own firearm. In the violent, chaotic scramble, his coat snagged on the edge of the dumpster. Unnoticed by anyone in the frenzy, a sleek black object slipped from his inner pocket and tumbled into the slush below. The firefight lasted barely 10 seconds. Realizing they were outgunned by Moretti's detail, the SUV's tires shrieked against the asphalt as it reversed out of the alley and vanished into the Boston night. "Everyone good?" Vincent barked, brushing sleet from his coat as he stood up, his gun still raised. "We're clear, boss. The car is here. We need to move now," Carmine urged, pushing Vincent toward the waiting Maybach. Within moments, the alley was dead silent once more, save for the wailing of distant sirens. Toby remained frozen in the dark alcove for a full 5 minutes, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. When he was certain the terrifying men in suits were gone, he crept out from his hiding spot. The snow was dotted with brass casings, glittering like dark pennies under the streetlight. As Toby hurried toward the main street to escape the approaching police sirens, his foot kicked something solid. He looked down. Half buried in the grey, frozen slush was a wallet. Toby picked it up. It was heavy, crafted from supple, midnight black Italian calfskin, bearing a subtle, silver crest. His freezing, trembling fingers opened it. He gasped. Inside was a stack of crisp, perfectly aligned $100 bills, more money than Toby had ever seen in his entire short life. There had to be at least $5,000. His stomach gave a violent, hollow cramp. He hadn't eaten since a half-eaten bagel yesterday morning. This money could buy him hot meals for months. It could get him a bus ticket down south where it was warm. It could buy him a real bed. But as he stared at the money, a memory flashed in his mind. "We may have nothing," Toby, his mother's exhausted, gentle voice echoed in his ears, accompanied by the memory of her warm hands cupping his face in the shelter. "But we always keep our honor. A man with no honor is poorer than a beggar." Toby swallowed hard. He couldn't steal it. He would return it tomorrow. Surely a man this rich would give him a $10 reward, enough for a slice of hot pizza and a hot chocolate. As Toby closed the wallet, a violent gust of wind whipped down the alley. Toby shivered violently, remembering the precious cargo in his own pocket. He reached into his torn jeans and pulled out a folded, badly creased Polaroid photograph. It was the only picture he had of his mother, Clara. The edges were already fraying, and the cheap paper was beginning to disintegrate from the constant moisture of the snow. If it got completely soaked tonight, her face would be gone forever. Toby looked at the billionaire's expensive wallet. It had a heavy, waterproof, zippered compartment in the back, seemingly empty. Carefully, reverently, Toby unzipped the compartment. He slipped his mother's fading photograph inside the waterproof lining, sealing it tight to protect her from the storm. He clutched the wallet to his chest, zipped it inside his oversized jacket, and ran into the snowy night, seeking refuge in the subway grates of South Station. The penthouse suite of the Grand Commonwealth Hotel, a glittering 60-story monolith owned entirely by Moretti Enterprises, was suffocatingly tense. Vincent Moretti stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the snow-covered Boston harbor, a glass of neat bourbon tight in his grip. The sun had just risen, casting a pale, cold light over the city. Behind him, Carmine and 4 lieutenants stood in rigid silence. "Tell me you found it," Vincent said, his voice deadly quiet. "Boss, we had 6 guys sweep the alley on Salem Street. We checked the dumpsters, the drains, even bribed the precinct captain to check the evidence lockup." "It's gone," Carmine said, swallowing hard. Vincent hurled his crystal glass at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, making the hardened criminals flinch. "Do you understand what was in that wallet, Carmine?" Vincent roared, his terrifying composure finally breaking. "I don't care about the $5 grand in cash." Tucked into the lining was the encrypted micro SD card. It has the routing numbers, the Cayman Island offshore accounts, the shell company registries. If Callahan's men picked that up during the shootout, they don't just have our money, they have the keys to the entire Moretti empire. The feds will have RICO indictments typed up by Friday. We'll tear the city apart, Vincent, block by block, Carmine promised. Down in the lavish, marble-floored lobby of the Grand Commonwealth Hotel, the morning rush of wealthy businessmen and socialites was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the mahogany reception desks. Pushing through the heavy revolving glass doors was Toby. He looked entirely out of place, a filthy, shivering street urchin, dripping melting snow onto the imported Turkish rugs. His lips were blue, and his hands were tucked deep into his jacket. He had walked 3 miles from South Station, following the name etched onto a platinum black card he had peeked at inside the wallet, Vincent Moretti, Grand Commonwealth. "Hey, hey, kid, you can't be in here." A towering security guard in a sharp suit barked, stepping directly into Toby's path. "I need to see Mr. Vincent Moretti." Toby said, his voice cracking from the cold, but his chin jutting out defiantly. The guard laughed, though it was a cruel, dismissive sound. "Yeah, I'm sure you do. Let's go back out to the street before I call child services." He reached out, grabbing Toby roughly by the scruff of his jacket. "No. Let me go, I have something for him." Toby thrashed, kicking the guard in the shin. "You little rat," the guard snarled, hauling Toby up off the ground. Ding. The private executive elevator chimed, and the brass doors slid open. Vincent Moretti, flanked by Carmine and 2 armed escorts, strode into the lobby. They were heading to the underground garage to begin a citywide manhunt. The commotion caught Vincent's eye. He paused, his cold gaze landing on the security guard holding the struggling homeless boy. Normally Vincent wouldn't blink at such a sight, but something about the desperate, feral look in the boy's eyes made him halt. "What's the problem here, David?" Vincent asked, his voice cutting through the lobby ambience like a razor. The guard immediately dropped Toby and stood at attention. "Apologies, Mr. Moretti. This stray wandered in off the street. Claims he's looking for you. I was just taking out the trash." Toby hit the floor, scrambling to his knees. He looked up at the intimidating man in the dark suit. He recognized the harsh, chiseled face from the alley last night. "Are you Vincent?" Toby asked, panting. Carmine stepped forward, his hand drifting toward his shoulder holster. "Watch your mouth, kid. Who sent you Callahan?" Toby ignored the silver-haired man. He reached inside his oversized jacket. The guards tensed, ready to draw their weapons on a child, but Toby slowly pulled out the black calfskin wallet. "You dropped this by the dumpsters," Toby said, holding it out with a trembling, dirt-stained hand. "I didn't take any of the paper money. I wanted to return it. My mum said stealing takes away your honor." The lobby seemed to freeze. Carmine's jaw dropped. Vincent's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. He stepped forward, waving his guards back, and knelt down so he was eye-level with the shivering boy. Vincent took the wallet. He immediately flipped it open, ignoring the thick stack of $100 bills. He ran his thumb along the inner seam, feeling the hard, tiny ridge of the concealed micro-SD card. It was still there. The Empire was safe. A massive wave of relief washed over the Mafia boss. He looked at the boy, really looked at him. The kid was starving, practically freezing to death, holding $5,000 in his hands overnight, and he hadn't taken a single dime. A rare, faint smirk touched Vincent's lips. "Your mother raised a very brave, very foolish young man," Vincent said softly. He pulled out the entire stack of $100 bills, $5,000, and held it out to Toby. "What's your name, kid?" "Toby," he whispered, staring at the money in shock. "Well, Toby, you just saved my life. Take this, all of it. Go buy yourself a feast." Toby hesitated, then slowly reached for the money. "Thank you, sir. But before I go, can I have my picture back?" Vincent frowned, pausing. "Your picture. My pockets have holes." Toby explained, nervously pointing to his torn jeans. "And the snow was ruining it. Your wallet had a waterproof zipper in the back. I just put her inside to keep her dry." Vincent looked at the wallet. He turned it over and unzipped the hidden back compartment. Sure enough, there was a folded piece of glossy paper tucked inside. "You're a resourceful kid," Vincent muttered, pulling the Polaroid out. He began to unfold it, to hand it back to the boy. But as the image flattened out in his hand, Vincent's eyes locked onto the photograph. Suddenly, the ambient noise of the luxurious hotel lobby, the soft piano music, the chatter of the guests, the hum of the revolving doors, completely vanished from Vincent's ears. All he could hear was the violent rushing of his own blood. His breath hitched in his throat. His entire muscular frame turned to absolute stone. "Boss?" Carmine asked, noticing the sudden, terrifying pallor overtaking Vincent's face. "Vincent, you okay?" Vincent didn't hear him. He was staring at the photograph with an intensity that bordered on madness. It was a picture of a woman sitting on a park bench. She looked older, exhausted, her face lined with the brutal wear of poverty. But the eyes, those striking emerald green eyes, were unmistakable. So was the distinct, crescent-shaped scar just above her left eyebrow. Furthermore, she was wrapped in a faded, oversized vintage leather motorcycle jacket. His leather motorcycle jacket. The one he had wrapped around her shoulders the night he proposed in the Boston Common 10 years ago. It was Clara. His Clara. The woman he had watched burn to ashes inside her vehicle a decade ago. The woman he had mourned every single day of his dark, violent life. She wasn't dead. The photo was clearly recent. The cars in the background of the park were modern models. Vincent's hands, which had steadily held a gun to the heads of rival bosses without a tremor, were now shaking violently. He slowly lifted his gaze from the photograph and stared at the 8-year-old boy standing in front of him. He looked at Toby's messy dark hair. He looked at Toby's nose. He looked at Toby's eyes, slate gray, exactly like his own. Toby. Vincent whispered, his voice cracking, entirely devoid of the terrifying Mafia boss persona. He sounded like a desperate, broken man. Where did you get this picture?" "I told you," Toby said, shrinking back, slightly confused and frightened by the intense look in the man's eyes. "It's my mum. Clara. We took it last year before she got really sick." Vincent's heart slammed against his ribs like a sledgehammer. Last year. She was alive last year. And this boy, this brave, stubborn, honorable boy with slate-gray eyes. "Where is she now, Toby?" Vincent asked, gripping the boy's small shoulders, tears suddenly hot and blurring his vision. "Where is Clara?" Toby looked down at the marble floor, his chin quivering as a single tear tracked through the dirt on his cheek. She died in September, at the municipal shelter on 4th Street. I'm all alone now." The silence that followed was deafening. Carmine and the guards exchanged shocked, bewildered glances as Vincent Moretti, the ruthless, untouchable king of the Boston underworld, fell to his knees on the floor of the Grand Commonwealth lobby, clutching the homeless boy to his chest as he shattered into a million pieces. The sprawling, opulent penthouse suite of the Grand Commonwealth Hotel had never felt so painfully quiet. The usual hum of the city below was muted by the thick, bulletproof glass, leaving only the soft crackle of the fireplace to break the agonizing silence. Vincent Moretti sat on the edge of a velvet armchair, his elbows resting on his knees, his face buried in his hands. Across the room, nestled in a massive king-sized bed, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets, Toby was fast asleep. The boy had been gently scrubbed clean by the hotel's on-call physician, Dr. Harrison Mead, a highly discreet private practitioner from Beacon Hill, who had treated the child's mild frostbite and severe malnutrition before administering a mild sedative. Before falling asleep, Toby had devoured a plate of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes with a ravenous desperation that had nearly broken Vincent's heart all over again. Carmine stepped quietly into the bedroom, his heavy footsteps muffled by the thick Persian rugs. He held a thick, yellowed manila folder in his hands. The silver-haired underboss looked visibly shaken, his usual stoic demeanor entirely dismantled by the morning's revelations. "Boss," Carmine whispered, stepping into the dim light. "We need to talk. I made the calls you asked for." Vincent slowly raised his head. His slate-grey eyes, usually cold and impenetrable, were completely bloodshot, swirling with a volatile mix of profound grief and a terrifying, awakening rage. He stood up silently, shutting the bedroom door to let Toby sleep, and followed Carmine into the adjacent mahogany-panelled study. "Tell me," Vincent demanded, his voice a dangerous low rasp. "Tell me everything." Carmine laid the file on the heavy oak desk. "When you told me to dig up the 2016 coroner's report on on the accident, I thought you were losing your mind, Vincent. We all saw the car burn. We all saw the forensic report. But I called Judge Samuel Harrison, forced him to pull the sealed autopsy file from the state archives. I also tracked down the medical examiner who signed off on the body 10 years ago, a guy named Dr. Leonard Shelby." Vincent stepped closer to the desk, his jaw clenched so tightly the muscles fluttered beneath his skin. "And Shelby didn't want to talk. I had to threaten to put his entire family in the ground before he finally cracked," Carmine said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Vincent, the DNA on the burned body didn't belong to Clara. Shelby admitted he was paid a massive sum of cash to swap the dental records and falsify the autopsy. The woman in that car was a Jane Doe, a drifter, who had died of an overdose 2 days prior. Somebody planted her body in Clara's sedan, rigged the ignition with a military-grade incendiary explosive, and made sure we all believed it was the Callahan Syndicate sending a message." Vincent felt the floor drop out from beneath him. He gripped the edge of the desk, the mahogany groaning under the force of his hands. She was alive. For 10 years she was alive, hiding in the shadows, freezing on the streets of my own city, while I was sitting in a penthouse. Vincent, she faked her death," Carmine said cautiously. "But why? Why would she run away from you? You were going to marry her. You were going to leave the life behind for her." The door to the study creaked open. Both men snapped their heads up, instinctively, reaching for their holstered weapons, only to freeze when they saw the small, frail silhouette standing in the doorway. Toby stood there, clutching a massive down pillow to his chest, his dark hair tousled. He looked incredibly small in the oversized silk pajamas the hotel staff had procured for him. "I couldn't sleep," Toby murmured, his grey eyes darting nervously between the two large men. "I heard you talking about my mum." Vincent's hardened expression instantly melted. He crossed the room, kneeling down to Toby's eye level, his massive hands gently resting on the boy's shoulders. "It's okay, Toby. You don't have to be afraid here. Nobody is ever going to hurt you again. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be very brave for me. Can you do that?" Toby nodded slowly. "My mum was brave. She taught me how to be." Vincent swallowed the lump forming in his throat. "When it was just you and your mum, did she ever talk about me? Did she ever explain why she was hiding?" Toby looked down at the plush carpet, furrowing his brow as he tried to pull memories from his young mind. "She never said your name. She just called you the man who holds up the sky. She said she loved you so much that she had to disappear so the sky wouldn't fall on you." Vincent closed his eyes, a rogue tear slipping down his cheek. The man who holds up the sky. It was an inside joke they shared 10 years ago, when Vincent had confessed the crushing weight of running the Moretti Empire. "Did anyone ever come to visit you?" Carmine interjected softly. "A man, maybe somebody who gave her money." Toby looked up at Carmine and nodded. Yes, once a year, right before it got cold, a tall man would come to the shelter. He wore a long, dark coat. He never smiled. He would hand my mum a thick envelope of money, but she would always cry after he left. She told me to stay in my room when he came. Vincent's blood turned to ice. Toby, this is very important. What did this man look like? Do you remember anything about him? Toby thought for a moment, chewing on his bottom lip. I couldn't see his face well because of his hat. But I remember his hands. When he gave my mum the envelope, he used a shiny gold lighter to light a cigar. The lighter had a picture of a dog on it. A bulldog. And he was missing a finger on his right hand, his ring finger. The silence in the study became absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating vacuum that seemed to suck all the oxygen from the room. Vincent slowly stood up. His face, previously flushed with sorrow, drained of all color until it resembled carved marble. The sorrow in his eyes had instantly evaporated, replaced by a dark, bottomless abyss of pure, murderous intent. Carmine took a step back, recognizing the terrifying shift in his boss. Vincent? No, it can't be. Vincent turned to Carmine, his voice devoid of any human emotion. It was the voice of the Reaper. Arthur Pendleton. Arthur Pendleton was the Moretti family's oldest consigliere. He was the man who had mentored Vincent when his father died. He was the man who managed the syndicate's finances, the man who brokered the truces, the man who stood by Vincent's side when he wept over Clara's burning car. Pendleton carried a custom-engraved solid gold lighter with a bulldog crest, and he had lost his right ring finger to a stray bullet during the Boston turf wars of the late 90s. Arthur, Carmine whispered, horrified. He orchestrated the bombing. He paid off the medical examiner. He blamed the Callahans so you would wipe them out. Vincent walked over to the desk, his movements frighteningly calm and precise. He picked up his Sig Sauer P226 from the leather blotter, checked the chamber, and slid it into his shoulder holster. Arthur knew I was going to leave the syndicate to marry Clara, Vincent said, his voice echoing with a chilling emptiness. He knew without me, the Moretti family would crumble against the Irish. So he gave her a choice. He threatened her. He told her if she didn't disappear, he would kill me. She faked her death and lived in absolute poverty. She died on the freezing streets of this city to keep me safe. She sacrificed her life and raised my son in squalor because of Arthur. Vincent turned to Carmine. Put 4 guards on my son. Nobody goes in or out of this penthouse. And Carmine, yes, boss, call Arthur. Tell him I need to see him at the shipping yards immediately. Tell him it's an emergency regarding the Callahan retaliation. The Moretti shipping yard was a desolate expanse of rusted containers. The biting wind whipped fiercely off the dark water. It was past midnight. The yard was entirely abandoned, save for a single black Mercedes parked under a flickering street lamp. Arthur Pendleton leaned against the hood of his luxury car. He was 65, wearing a bespoke tweed overcoat and a fedora to shield his face from the freezing sleet. He checked his gold Rolex, irritated by the sudden delay. Headlights cut through the darkness as Vincent's Maybach rolled into the yard, stopping 20 yards away. The engine quickly died. The headlights remained on, casting blinding beams across wet asphalt. Vincent stepped out. He was alone. He did not wear a topcoat against the freezing wind. He only wore his dark suit. He walked slowly, his shoes splashing in puddles. Vincent, Arthur called out, tossing his cigar onto the ground. Carmine sounded panicked. Have the Irish made a move tonight? Vincent did not answer. He stopped 10 feet away, staring with a gaze so cold it made the wind warm. "Do you know where I was this morning?" Vincent asked. Arthur frowned, dealing with the fallout from the alley shootout. "I was in my penthouse," Vincent continued, completely ignoring him, "looking at an 8-year-old boy, a boy named Toby." Arthur's posture stiffened imperceptibly. His hand twitched toward his coat. "I do not know what you are talking about." "His mother died in a municipal shelter 3 months ago," Vincent said, taking a step closer. Agony bled into his voice. "She lived in shadows, starving, protecting my young son." Arthur's face paled. He slowly let his hand drop down. He knew it was over. "You did not lie to Vincent Moretti when he looked at you with those eyes." "She was a distraction," Arthur said, his voice turning cold. "You were the heir. You were going to throw it all away. The family needed a king. Without you here, we would have been slaughtered by the rival Callahan syndicate." "So you gave her an ultimatum?" Vincent stated very calmly. "I told her the truth." Arthur fired back at him. "If you left, you would be unprotected. The Irish would butcher you. I told her the only way you survive is if you stay in power. If she loved you, she had to die. So I arranged the car bomb. And it worked. You are a god in this city." "I am a monster," Vincent whispered, pulling his weapon fast. The gunshot echoed across the empty harbor like a thunderclap. Arthur gasped, falling to his knees as blood rapidly expanded. Vincent walked forward, standing over the bleeding, dying older man. "You stole 10 years of my life," Vincent said coldly. "You let the woman I love freeze to death alone. You let my son beg for scraps in the street. You built an empire on the ashes of my soul." "Vincent, please," Arthur choked out, coughing up thick red blood. "The king is dead," Vincent said. He pulled the trigger. 6 months later, the spring sun was warm, casting long shadows across the immaculate green lawns of Mount Auburn Cemetery. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom, their pink petals drifting lazily downward. Vincent stood before a beautiful, newly carved white marble headstone. He wore a simple grey sweater and very dark jeans. He had walked away, handing the syndicate over to Carmine. Beside him stood Toby, looking extremely healthy, bright and safe. Toby stepped forward, placing a fresh bouquet of white lilies. The engraving gleamed, "Clara Hayes, beloved mother. The sky stands." "Do you think she knows we are together?" Toby asked. Vincent knelt down, pulling his young son into an embrace. He finally had his family back, feeling peace. "I know she does, Toby," Vincent whispered. "I know she does." If this heartbreaking story of sacrifice, betrayal, and a father's relentless love moved, you don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, real-life dramatic tales. Your support helps us bring these incredible stories to life. Drop a comment below on what Vincent should do next. Thanks for watching today, and we will see you soon.